Welcome back to the Music Maestro Podcast, where we deep dive into the industry's most influential voices. Today, we have an incredible guest, Alysha Wood-Cooksley, Head of Streaming Strategy at Got Your Back. With over 8 years of experience working across Spotify, Warner Records, and some of the biggest names in music, she has played a pivotal role in the success of artists like Dua Lipa, Liam Gallagher, and Michael Bublé. We'll be exploring the future of streaming and how it's shaping the industry. Please welcome Alysha.
Hi.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. That was like hearing an intro for yourself is like, wow. I don't really know how to react to it.
No, I know. Well, having started these intros, everyone seems to be quite impressed with them, which is good.
Yeah, I am. I'm just like, you go, oh, I did all that.
First off, let's explain why you're actually sat here, because there is a reason.
Yeah.
We had Amy Collins on. She was one of our first few guests. I love Amy. She's brilliant. Nikesh, you said it was one of your favourite podcasts to date, correct? And a couple of weeks after, I think I asked her, listen, could you name some incredible, amazing women in the music industry? And you were one of those names.
Amy's incredible. Amy's amazing. Like she just really is. Like, I mean, it's big shoes to fill to come on after her, because I think she's just absolute top level.
She's quality. But listen, she reckons you are as well. So how do you feel about that?
Honoured, because I really respect her. I think she's absolutely amazing at what she does.
Yeah,
she's a brilliant person, and artists just love working with her.
She's very funny.
She's so funny. She's really funny. Yeah, she's great. And you go anytime you go out with her. I mean, she even said on the podcast she thinks she's drunk all of the wine in the UK. And we've all been there, all had a wine with her. But she just knows everybody. Everyone knows her and loves her. And it's such a what's the word I'm looking for? You just pick up on that energy. It's really contagious.
Well, do you know what? When I started this podcast, what I wanted to do. I don't provide a platform. I don't know. It sounds a bit. What I wanted to do is just basically talk to some of the good people in the industry. Now, some of these I know, but some of them I don't. You're one of them that I don't. But apparently, you're one of these good people. So we're about to find out. But listen, you've got some amazing experience. I particularly, I mean, it goes from like Radio 1 to the Box TV. To Spotify, to Warner Records, and then obviously all of your own personal radio experience early doors as well. So we'll have a chat about all that. But I think I'm gonna start by asking you the question. You've been. Well, actually, you started in acting. So you did your education in acting, and there was obviously the radio thing. And you've got a BA in acting.
Yes.
Right. How did you get there? How did you start that? Did you always love acting and wanted to do acting? And I'm going to presume it didn't work out, and so you got into music?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to be an actress from being, I think I was about 14 years old when it sort of occurred to me that I could do a job that I loved.
Okay.
That's what it came to me, that I was always in school plays, youth theatres, like all that kind of stuff. And there was just one moment where I just remember talking to someone, and I said, what do you want to do when you leave school? And he said, I want to be an actor. And I went, oh, I think I do. Because it's fun. Like, I don't have to go and be like an accountant or do a job that I think is boring. And so from that point, that was always the goal. To be on, the silver screen, winning Oscars, they're kind of all the dreams that you have when you're a teenager. So I came down to London. I went to a brilliant drama school that sadly no longer exists, but it was called the Academy of Live and Recorded Art. Yeah. And it was focusing on not just theatre, but film, radio, and it all kind of started there. I loved doing radio drama. I loved doing voiceover. Mm-hmm. It was actually the freedom of not being seen. Yeah. So there's just so much focus on your body. And it was, 2008 to 2010. And it was so extreme of like still women being size 0. And it was really tough. So I did the acting thing for a couple of years, but again, it just got tougher and tougher, and it was really hard to stick out. But using my voice was always something I loved doing. And so I thought, right, I'm going to stop acting. Maybe I could still do voiceover radio. And then I just sort of went, oh, what about radio presenting? And started looking into it. And as I started doing a couple of courses and picking up some online radio stations in like Croydon, and then eventually the radio station that used to be at the Roundhouse, I started to get an idea of what was going on behind, about the producers and the people who like picked the music, and all of that started to really fascinate me. And so that's then how I ended up at Radio 1 and 1 Extra, was actually as an intern, a production intern. And I was trying to Trojan horse myself into it, which they say not to do. Like, don't come if you are a presenter. We're not interested in presenters on the internship.
Right.
And I was like, well, maybe I can kind of do a bit of both. But ultimately, the production was what I fell in love with, and then music curation. And so it's almost kind of a meander, but it was that sort of journey from just the love of performing to then the love of actually how things are made that brought me to here.
So let's rewind before the acting.
Yes.
When you were young, where'd you grow up?
All over. I'm originally from Yorkshire, but I lived in Wales and I've lived in Scotland, sort of equal parts of my life. And then I've been down south now for like 15 years.
So when you were young, like, was it just all about the acting and want to be an actor, or was there a big, like, was your family very much into music, and what kind of what were you into at that age?
Well, music has always been a big part of my life and a big part of my dad's life. Like, my dad is massively into music. Like, he took me to my first concert when I was 7.
Which was?
Which was Steps.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he took me, and it was such a moment that shaped probably like my love of music, but also my work ethic. He took me on a school night and with some of my friends, and I was in year 2 at the time, and we got back at like midnight or something from this concert, and all of my friends got to take the next day off, and he made me get up and go into school. He was like, if you play hard, like you work hard, you do both. You can't have it both ways.
That is amazing. I mean, that is sort of how it ends up working in the real world, in work life, right?
Yeah. He didn't know, but he was actually prepping me for working in the music industry.
Exactly, yeah.
But he was just huge into music, and he actually bought me my first cassette, and I must have been about 4 or 5, and he bought me this band called Alysha's Attic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a song.
They've got a 90s classic, haven't they?
Alysha Rules the World.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's the classic. I think the classic is I Am, I Feel.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Okay.
But obviously, in my little 4-year-old head, Alysha Rules the World
anthem
was the best song in the world.
Yeah,
so that's like probably 2 of my earliest memories. And yeah, he really shaped my love of music, because he was massively into country in the 90s, as well as into pop. So, you know, my favourite artists were like the Spice Girls, Steps, Garth Brooks and Helen Jackson. It was like this wide variety. And then as things sort of progressed with the acting, I was always in love with musicals from really a young age as well. And my connection with that and my connection with music, with musicals, it's about the musicality, it's about the story. And I think that has actually, looking back, has really shaped the way that I work now. And like my connection to it is all about what's the story behind the song and the story with the artist. And it all kind of stemmed from musicals.
So I guess then that sort of answers my question. What I was going to say is like, so why we speak to a lot of people about how they got into their music career, if you like. And a lot of people end up saying, oh, well, I didn't even realise music, like the industry side or the behind the scenes, could be a career. Was that the same for you, or was that just because you like the musical side, you thought, well, I know you can be an actress, so that's what I'm going to try and be?
Yeah, it's kind of that. It was the acting thing, and I just always loved performing, really, even from a young age. But yeah, I had no idea for music. To me, it was just like, well, you can be a singer, and that's sort of it. Yeah. So it never, whilst I was, you know, I was playing piano, I was playing flute, and music was always, I say, such a big part of my life. And I was picking up on classical as well as like the golden age of indie, and sort of like the noughties was a big part. But it never occurred to me until I actually was speaking to a radio producer who was taking a 1-day radio presenting course of like, oh, it's not just one person in a room doing something. There's actually more to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, I mean, we can go back to the beginning of your career. Chili Cow. I don't know if I know specifically what that is. Should I?
No. I don't think the company exists anymore.
All right.
It was, so I was working in the Cineworld at the O2, bill paying whilst trying to be an actress and getting access to free film, so seeing it as like school as much as anything. And it was with a performer in me, but when I was on the tills, most of the time I would just be bored when I was there. And so I would end up just chatting to customers, messing around, like joking around with them. And then they ended up making this role for me, I think, to sort of try and get me to just stop talking and do some work.
Yeah.
Where I would stand at the front of the cinema and I would talk to people when they came in and advise them on films and try and sell them on unlimited cards and stuff like that. Because they were like, it's like acting. You're going to learn a script.
Right,
like,
okay.
let's try and put it to use.
Yeah. Well, a sales script, basically.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was I just ended up making mates with loads of customers and being like, when my boss comes, I'm just going to start telling you about the films we've got. Is that all right? And it was just a laugh. But one guy that I was serving and was chatting to came up to me and gave me a business card and said, I think you're great. I want to offer you a job.
Amazing.
And this was at a time where I was thinking acting's not going to work for me. I'm not as passionate about it as I once was, but I don't know where to go next. And it was a digital marketing job for a startup. And I just was like, why not? It's an adventure. So I did it. It only lasted for 3 months. The company lost money and had to let people go.
Right.
But it was a springboard for me to break out of the acting world and try something new. Well,
yeah, okay, because then we've got 2 stints at different radio stations as an actual presenter, Croydon Radio and Roundhouse Radio, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And how did those opportunities come about? How did you throw yourself into this radio presenting to the point that people just gave you a show?
Croydon Radio was actually by another bill-paying job I had. I was working in a local diner, and the head chef there had a show on the radio station. And so I just got chatting to him and said, I'd love to come and be a guest on your show. At which point he was like, great, yeah, it's about prog rock. Do you like prog rock? And I was like, yeah. I don't know. I knew nothing about it. So he just took me on and we had a laugh. And it turned out that the station owners were listening and said, right, pitch us a show. So I did. And then that kind of worked out from there. And I loved being on Croydon Radio because it was all about the community. So it wasn't just talking about music. It was a bit of a magazine show talking about anything and everything. Sadly, I don't think Croydon Radio is no more. I think it went under in the pandemic.
All right.
And then Roundhouse Radio, I was at a networking event might have been the Radio Academy. And I met who was the station manager at the time and just sort of pitched away really at him. So it was a lot of the first one was just complete circumstance, but a lot of it was just chipping away at people and not letting things lie.
Okay, so and during this time that you've got these shows as a presenter across these 2 different stations, you've done an internship at BBC Radio, at Radio 1 and 1 Extra?
Yes.
And there's also, well, let's start with that first. How did that come about?
That was all through the Careers Hub with the BBC. I applied 4 times to get in. They opened once a quarter and I just relentlessly went through. And the time I actually got in, I've not applied for anything on there in a while, so I don't know if they still do it, but they kept your old applications. And the time I got in, I checked and it was 2 minutes to the deadline closing for the next wave.
Right.
But my old application was there, so I just went through and edited it, putting in loads of what I thought were Radio 1 buzzwords. Because I'd heard that a machine goes through and picks the buzzwords. So I just put in loads of young people, new music and all this stuff. And then I got an interview off the back of that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll get on to, because you obviously were a team assistant, marketing assistant, BBC Radio 1 later on. But before that, you've got On the Sly.
Yes.
And that is sort of still involved with BBC Radio, right?
Yeah, it was actually. So all of these were kind of coming together at the same time. And I had signed up for a course with Point Blank Music School in radio production.
Yeah.
And it was the first part of the course was run by an amazing man called Glenn Middleditch, who used to produce at Radio 1 and is just a lovely, lovely man. And he was putting me in touch with as many different contacts as he could. And this was one of them, the On the Sly company. And my thing was, I want to work in radio now. So I will do anything and everything.
Yeah.
One of the main things that they teach you in drama school, they talk about your toolbox. And that you need to have a fully equipped toolbox. You can't just have a hammer in there. You've got to have everything. So when you're acting, it's like looking at radio, looking at writing, and what other things can you do that are related to your craft. So I've always taken that into everything I do. So I was like, audio production, great. I don't know much about it, but I want to learn. I will graft. I will come. Like, what do you need? So I went and met them and did some amazing things, because they were doing, at the time, they were kind of pioneering what you hear a lot now on the radio, which is sounding like artists are singing Radio 1 or singing Capital or singing that. They had, at the time, a lot of voiceover artists on their books who could sing and sound like artists. So originally when you were hearing it, it wasn't the artist singing it, it was just a sound-alike.
Right.
So they were pioneering a lot of things like that. They're now doing like LED shows. Like, the way they've grown as a company is incredible.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from them, was working with a lot of international radio stations. And then they won the original pitch for the first Radio 1 summer mixes. And so I was involved in that and speaking to a lot of radio pluggers, a lot of the shows and the people at Radio 1.
Yeah.
So it's helping me keep my foot in the door at all times, which was the aim.
Okay, because again, now I'm looking at On the Sly, and I can see there's also, in conjunction with this, you've got a spell at Radio X as assistant to the Chris Moyles team.
Yeah.
And also your team assistant, marketing assistant at BBC Radio again, right?
Yes. So when I was the intern, I used to joke I would be the intern that never left.
Yeah.
And they go, everyone says that. And I'm like, I know everyone says that, but like, I'm actually going to be the one. And so I would sit down and I would talk to everyone. I'd be like, tell me about your job. What's going on? How can I stay here? And so I got a stint straight out of the internship, temping with the marketing team. During that time, an amazing woman called Pippa Taylor was producing Greg James when he had the drive time slot, and she was moving to go work with Moyles. And I said to her, like, take me with you. Like, please take me with you. I love Moyles. I absolutely love him. And at the time, he was just coming back after 3 years away with Moyles. He didn't have the best reputation, like, let's be honest. Yeah. And people had said to me, you got to know what you're getting yourself in for.
Beware, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, do you know what? I'm fine. I'm fine. I grew up listening to him. I love him. I want to work for him. It was XFM. It was the launch of Radio X. I was like, I love this music. I want to go. And actually, I adored working with him. It's one of my favourite jobs I've ever done, actually. And what I would do is I would get up at 4 a.m, go and do the breakfast show, finish the breakfast show about 10, and then walk up to Radio 1 to do the 11 till 7 shift.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's full on.
Yeah, it was. But I wanted it so much. Yeah. And I was having so much fun on that breakfast show. I mean, you're just delirious. Everybody's sleep deprived. It's why you come up with like these weird and wonderful ideas. And it's such a strong community.
Yeah, yeah.
And Moyles' audience is a strong community. Like I had pink hair at the time. Literally because I was like, if I am the one with the pink hair, people will remember me as a freelancer.
That is amazing. Okay, yeah. That is incredible.
Was it.
Yeah.
And like twice on air, I think it was, Moyles referred to me as the one with the pink hair. And then one time we went out and about, we were doing a road trip with him, and I was in the centre of Leeds, I think it was, with Dom on the show. And someone came up to me and went, "Oh my God, are you the one with the pink hair? Can I have a selfie?" And I was like, I've literally been shouted on air twice. But his fan base are incredible, and the audience. So it was really one of my favourite jobs because of that. And that helped me sort of power on through to pull those however many hour days they were.
Okay, interesting. Well, then let's talk about why you, because it's at this point, we're now at November 2016, where you basically stop working within radio.
Yeah.
And you move into the Box Plus network. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people might not know what that is. I do, because I watched it, and like, it was in that peak time, I guess, music television. Whether this, I don't know if this is peak time or not for music television, but it was very much a thing, right, back in the day. Why don't you explain what the box is, or actually now was, right?
Yeah. I feel like I've said that, like, am I a demon or something? Because I'm like, my drama school's no more, like Croydon Radio.
Do you know, I was going to say earlier, there's a pattern here, but I didn't want to, I thought I'll leave it, but like, you said it, so that's fine.
Everything is no more, beware of this podcast. No, Box, when I joined it, it wasn't the golden era necessarily, as you said, but it was owned by Channel 4, and it was just a run of music television shows that would play music videos on repeat.
Basically very much a rival to MTV, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason why I went there was simply because I wanted to stay at Radio 1, I wanted to stay at Radio X, but I was on a freelance contract for all of them, and I wanted a full-time one, and they were really hard to come by and really competitive, and I wasn't getting that, so I wanted to look elsewhere. And then the programming job came up, and interestingly, initially I got cut. I didn't get it. I didn't even get an interview.
Wow.
For it. They just said, you're not experienced enough. And I knew that going in. I was like, I don't know what programming they use. I don't know. I love music. I know music. I can learn it. And then I ended up getting a call from the head there. There's a guy called Mark Adams, who called me and said, I think we made a mistake cutting people based on experience, because we can teach you how to use tech, but can't teach you how to love music. And so again, I was like, right, this is an opportunity here, like grabbed it with both hands. And the team there were an amazing bunch of people. I learnt a lot and loved it. And yeah, I'm sad to see it go, because it was a brilliant place.
Then comes a company that very much is still here. Right? Spotify is not going anywhere at the moment. So you're doing your music programming thing at the Box. And am I right in thinking if you're music programming, and it would be the equivalent of music editing at Spotify?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, if you don't know what music programming and editing is, like, well, what is it?
It is making playlists, essentially, and choosing the right songs to go in the right spaces at the right time, and to have the right flow of songs as well.
I guess within particular themes as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Box, I was mainly working across pop spaces. So
right.
and yeah, depending on the time of day, is it like a wake up show, a going home show, chill out show, like energetic show? Is it centered around a particular artist or a particular decade?
Yeah.
That was very much with Box. And with Spotify, I was primarily focusing on indie, rock, folk and alternative music. So
is that your thing then, in terms of a genre?
Yeah, we kind of talked a lot about musicals as the start, but indie really was for me when it was, when it was all starting, like Killers and the Arctic Monkeys, and they were bands that I was absolutely in love with. And then I started to go down sort of the indie pop route and working with emerging indie artists through Roundhouse Radio and through Croydon Radio. And that was always what I loved, seeing like upcoming talent.
So Spotify is a pretty big deal. I mean, as in getting a job there, right? I mean, obviously you have got a wealth of experience, and I know by the people that have got employed by Spotify is if you've got a radio background, you've got a good chance, right?
Yeah.
How did this opportunity come about?
So this actually came initially out of the internship at Radio 1. It came from the talking to everybody, going around saying hi, like wanting to know what they were doing, and then following them on social media, making friends with them. It's a bit more Facebooky in those times. So making sure I was putting everything I did on Facebook. And I was stood having a drink at a pub around the corner from Radio 1, catching up with some people while I was at Box. And another amazing human called Dexter Batson, who was in that role at the time, saw me and said, I'm going on parental leave. I think you should apply for my job at Spotify. And that's actually how I first heard about it. And I had complete imposter syndrome and said to him, no. I was like, nope, no way will I work at Spotify. Like, what are you, like, what, me? And it was really, I was just like, absolutely not. I went away, I had a word with myself, I talked the imposter syndrome down and well, you've got to be in it to win it, you've got to at least apply. And it all went from there. And I mean, what a brilliant company it was to work for. It was a wonderful time. It was very different to where it is now.
Yeah.
They've got the big offices down by Embankment. We were in ones on Argyle Street, and there was no pitch tool or anything. It was kind of like the Wild West a little bit.
Yeah.
But to work at Spotify, you have to be a huge music nerd, like, and a huge fan, like, not cool for school and like, yeah, it's fine. It's like people would come around the office on a Friday and go, Happy New Music Friday, what's your favourite track? And it would be that level of sheer joy around music. And it was just amazing to be around.
Amazing. So I guess then, did this provide you with the platform to go into your next role, which is as well within the head of streaming, I will say.
Yes.
At Warner Records.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So as my contract was coming to an end, I kind of had to decide what was next, and I was really fortunate being at Spotify and being an editor at Spotify that a lot of people wanted to hear what I had to say and wanted to meet with me. And I got advised by the man who was sort of the second in command to George Ergatoudis when he was the head of music at Spotify. Austin Darbo said to me, right, when you meet these people, you tell them that they need you and tell them what the job title is, which I thought was the boldest piece of advice ever. And I was just, again, imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't think this is me. But I said, if I could choose where I went next, I think I want it to be a label, because at Spotify, I could see, I would put a band on Hot New Bands and I would see it grow, and I would move it to the indie list and I would see it grow, and I loved seeing that progression. Yeah. And I thought, at a label, I can be more involved in that progression. And I said, I'd love to go to Warner Records, or Warner Brothers, as it was at the time. I was like, what like Foles, Muse, Royal Blood, Dua Lipa, Liam Gallagher. I was like, come on, like this is my dream. So I met with Phil Christie, who was the president at the time, and we were chatting. We were having a nice, really lovely chat. And I had Austin in my head going, tell him. And I just sort of went, I think maybe you might need a streaming manager, Phil. And he went, yes, I think we do. And I was like, oh my God, it worked. That sort of progressed from there. And it was a really fortunate position for me to be in, to come from Spotify and to be able to have that conversation. And that was, again, another really great 5 years of my life, going and setting up that department. Yeah. It was an adventure.
Well, big shout out to Austin then, because he sort of sorted you out there, right?
Yeah, he did. Amazing. Yeah, what guy.
Then we get into, so you do, what you say, 5-6 years at Warner
5
Records?
years, yeah.
And then you move into, you leave Warner Records, you do your freelance thing for a spell, but then you come into this, and we can touch on that, but then we come into this position of head of streaming strategy at Got Your Back, right?
Yeah.
How did this all unfold?
This is another bit of a journey. Towards the end of my time at Warner, just something wasn't feeling right with me. Like, I wasn't in a good place with my mental health. I just, and it is a cliche, but it is true. Like, I didn't recognize the person in the mirror anymore. I felt really burned out. I just felt guilty all the time. Like, just all these weird, not good emotions. And I just wasn't, I don't think I was a particularly good person to be around either. Like, I was struggling. And I finally realised, I was like, you need to go take some time out. And maybe music's not for you anymore. Maybe this is the end of the journey. And I think we've come through such I don't really know what to say, but an awakening when it comes to mental health. And there was a lot going on at the time, and a lot of people struggling. And I thought, I think mental health is where I need to go work in. So I decided to take 3 months off and start to reassess and then to look into mental health training. During this time, Dave Rajan, who is the director of Got Your Back, was head of radio at Parlophone, and he was leaving to set up Got Your Back. And he said, I've heard you're leaving. Where are you going? I think you should come join me at this new company. And I said no, which seems to be the theme of people going to talk to me. I was like, no, I can't, I don't think I'm meant for music anymore. And I don't know, I just don't feel like myself. I need to get back to who I am and we'll see. And so I ended up taking 6 months off because 3 months didn't feel like enough. I felt like I was really getting there. And through the 6 months, I realised that I just lost my way, and I loved music, and I always have. And it was actually kind of coming back to realise how much music has been in my life from such a young age.
Yeah.
And that what I wasn't doing that I should have been is looking at those feelings, like that feeling of guilt. Like, why do I feel guilty? And a lot of the times it was because I cannot spend all the time I feel I need to focusing on the artist that I'm working with. I felt like I would close my working day and I'd be like, oh, it doesn't matter how much I've achieved. I haven't focused on this or this or this, and they deserve it. And they really, I'm working for them. I'm representing them for streaming, and I've done nothing. And I wasn't saying what's the solution to that. I was being defeatist about it. And Got Your Back is an artist services company that Dave set up about 2 years ago now. And the idea behind it is people can come and curate their own team. So we have radio, we've got myself on streaming, we've got Natalie on TV, we've got an amazing woman called Jenny just starting doing marketing with us, and we've got Liam who does socials and admin. So that you can come and you can curate. You can take all of us, you can take one of us, you can take none of us if we don't kind of fit with your values. But it was like curating your own team and us curating our own roster. So working deliberately with a limited amount of people so that we can focus 100% across everything so that nothing will get lost, so that I can talk to you every day. I can email you and tell you who I've emailed about you this week. Just the kind of the stuff that was making me feel like kind of useless, if I'm honest, before.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that that wouldn't happen again, and I could kind of solve the issues I was feeling within myself. And yeah, I guess the other stuff with Got Your Back. So it's about, as I said, picking your own team, making sure that you are always on our minds and that we're always talking about you every day as an artist, manager, label, distro, whoever we work with. And that everything is based, and this is my favourite thing about the company, everything is based on a set of solid values that we come visit every day. The number one value of our company is kindness.
Brilliant one. The best one.
The best one. And it's not like, oh, it's so good. Oh, we're going to get you on play. Oh, this is great. Our mantra is, you've got food in your teeth.
Yeah.
Because that is not an easy conversation to have. You don't. You're fine.
Yeah. Totally.
It's not an easy conversation to have, but
No.
it's a quick one. It's an honest one. It saves us. It's a little bit awkward for 5 seconds, and then you move on with your life, and everything's better. And that's the value behind it. It's like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, you are amazing and you're great and I'm scared of you, so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to mollycoddle you. It's like, we are in a partnership together. This isn't working, and I'm going to tell you how we make it work. Or we go back to the drawing board. So that's number one. Number two, authenticity. Everything has to come from a place of authenticity for the artist and for ourselves. Because I think I was seeing a lot of things coming through that were a bit like, trying to be one size fits all. This person did this on TikTok, therefore you should do this on TikTok. This person has released like this, therefore you must release like this. Or you have to write a song like this because we want it to go up the charts. And what I believe is that you can only feel true success if you are being your authentic self. That you can change everything about yourself to get a hit, but is that going to feel as good if you know that it's actually nothing like you?
Yeah.
And so everything that we do is tailoring these programs to be authentic rather than just, copying what has worked for somebody else.
It's really interesting. And as much as I've heard of, I'm very familiar with artist services. What you seem to have here is a very bespoke artist services proposition.
Yes.
In as much as there is a dedicated individual for different aspects of what is required, right?
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this before in a podcast, but I very much remember when Tasha Demi we had on the show, and she was saying basically every campaign, and I guess maybe this is the way the industry has shifted, every campaign needs a bespoke team. I think that was the headline for the YouTube video. And basically, so, I guess with a major label, or let's say record labels in general, you've got a team and you have to work with that team. And whilst they might have people within that team that are better skilled at certain genres, I think her point was, you pick this marketing company and this PR company, but you've got that in a kind of different way where it's individuals within one company, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It feels very, I've not heard of anything like that.
Yeah.
Is anybody else doing something like this?
I don't think in the way that we are.
Yeah.
No. Because we also, again, it's a small company, so we can innovate really quickly. We had an artist he was one of the first artists I worked with, an amazing, amazing guy called Alfie Jukes. And his management came to us originally saying, we would like you to do the radio for Alfie. And we looked into him and we said, you know what? We don't think that's a good use of your investment. We think, yes, there are certain shows, but he's still a developing artist. So there's not a lot of radio shows around for that. So it's saying to them, why are you spending all that money when we're going to pitch to 2 or 3 shows? That's not fair.
Yeah.
But we're like, but what if we made this program, which we call The Quarterback now? We were like, what if we made this where I run out with the streaming strategy and then we sort of tag on a little bit of radio. So it's like kind of a cut price thing for people to do. So instead of going, I've got this person doing radio, this person doing streaming, you come together, you get both at like a better value investment, and then we can help each other. And that program really proved itself. And it's literally an idea that we just came up with off the back of just looking into one artist. And we now do that a lot with people. And what it means is that you always have, more often than not, you always have at least one win. You'll get growth at streaming on maybe single 1, and then single 2 you'll get radio and no streaming.
Yeah.
And then single 3 you'll get both, and you see that progression. And we're able to do that really across any of the services. It's just, all it takes is, do you think this is a good idea? Yeah, let's do it. And then we run with it. And that, I think, is the thing that gives us the most power, is that it's not like you have to come to us and use all of us, or, we'll just take your money and run. It's like, no, how can we make something that is best for you and your investment and your growth? Okay,
brilliant. Head of streaming at Warner Records, head of streaming strategy at Got Your Back. When people say streaming strategy,
yes,
what does that actually mean in simple terms? What is streaming strategy?
So, first of all, the strategy to me was really, really important to have in the job title. I don't normally really care about titles, but you say head of streaming and people think, playlists. And that's all they think of, which is not what I do, and it is not streaming strategy. Streaming strategy is, how do we build your audience and your fan base at streaming? Part of that, that is playlist pitching, but it's not the be all and end all, because playlists used to be a lot more powerful than they are now. I think that's something, I think it's probably been said on the podcast before. I think it's something that's kind of universally known, but they're not as powerful. So before, maybe if you got on Hot Hits UK, it would really help massively your growth. It obviously is still really effective and really massive, but they don't have the power that they once did. And even then, a playlist is where you can get a listener. It's not necessarily where you can get a fan. There is a difference. So, you know, like if we put a playlist on right now and it's in the background, we nip out to go to the toilet, we come back, there's still music going, we are still listening, but we're not necessarily fans. What I do is I look at when that person comes to you from a playlist or wherever, that they will turn into a fan. So part of that is definitely pitching for playlists, talking to editors, finding the right champions for you. But it's also from the very basic, what does your profile look like when people get there? To what are the creative ideas we can do with your music and get people into your world? How can we build your artistry? To even looking, sometimes the streaming strategy is looking and consulting on other areas that aren't directly related to streaming. Because
what, like social?
Yeah. Yeah. What are you doing? What are you doing on socials? What are your social numbers at? Where's your live at? Like all the things that make a story that I can take to people to tell them the story of you and to build your artist profile. All of that weighs into how we direct streaming and how we speak to people. And that is either streaming services or your fan base.
Okay, so I'm going to have a go at summarising that in short. So, streaming strategy is at the heart of it about turning listeners into fans.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, is that a good one?
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
okay.
I like it.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is. It is really.
Okay, amazing. Right, we've got some questions now. There's
it.
quite a few of them. Don't know if we'll have time to go through all of them, but we're going to stick with streaming. You've led some pretty big campaigns, Dua Lipa, Liam Gallagher, you mentioned some others earlier. How do you think the role of streaming has evolved since you started?
Massively. So when I first, alone in terms of the offering. So when I first started doing streaming, Amazon Music didn't exist. So things have started to grow, and we didn't have the pitch tool, which I guess people don't know the pitch tool through Spotify for Artists. That is how you pitch music to editors. It's the only way to pitch music to them. That didn't exist. So it was kind of the Wild West free for all. You didn't have algorithms. There was so much that you didn't have. And what we were kind of doing at that time when I first started back in 2018 really was just thinking, how do we get on playlists? That was what it was all about. There was no evolution from that of going, as we've spoken about, how do you build your fan base? What are you offering to your fans? How are you developing your artistry through all of these streaming profiles? So it's a completely different landscape. But then I think I would always say to people, the second you think you understand streaming is the second you don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
Because it changes so much and so rapidly. The landscape is always different.
Yeah. Okay. Well, playlists. We've spoken a bit about playlists. I love playlists, and so sometimes I don't like to hear that they're don't have as crucial a role as they once did, because they were a very, very powerful tool for artist discovery, and I'd still argue they are to some degree. But like in today's music ecosystem, how important are playlists?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, they are still crucial. They're just not everything.
Right.
And it is purely from that, turning listeners into fans, streaming strategy. Like, you get in a playlist and it gives you reach. But it doesn't always give you the fan from that. So if I can offer some data examples. So if you go into Spotify for Artists, there is a brilliant segment called Segments. And it breaks down your listeners on one section and your streams on another. So if you look at your listeners, usually for an artist, about 5% will be active listeners. They're fans. They're people who are streaming you from playlists, going to your profile, like regularly streaming you every week. Is that
another word for those called lean forward, or is that different?
Yeah, no, that's kind of it. Yeah, okay. Lean forward listeners.
Yeah.
Then you'll get maybe 75% of your listeners from programmed sources. That is playlists.
Okay.
So in that instance, most of your listeners come from playlists.
Mm-hmm.
If you flip that to look at your streams, it reverses. And you will see 60% plus of your streams come from your active audience. And maybe 20% of your streams come from playlists.
Wow.
So whilst playlists are crucial to get that reach, that 77% or, whatever percentage you want to look at, it's converting them into active listeners, which is where you get your stream count, where you get, I guess, your income, where your fan base, people who are going to buy tickets and buy merch.
Yeah.
That's what you want to turn them into.
I've got some questions here then, because I don't know if I fully understand myself, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
If you're an active listener, how are you consuming that song? Is it on a playlist?
It can be, no, it will be, if you're an active listener, it's in your own made playlists.
Okay.
Or from going straight to their profile.
Okay. And so that's where the majority of streams come from?
Yeah.
Not being featured in actual curated editorial playlists?
On the whole, yes.
Wow.
Because your active audience are your obsessive fans.
Who stream multiple times, same songs over and over again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay. There you go, I'm there now. Amazing. So, you've got this knowledge, obviously, because you've done your time at Spotify. And when it comes to, like, editorial decisions.
Yeah.
And I'm interested, we'll go back to playlist. I want to ask another question there. But these editorial decisions that can be made, like how can that impact an artist's career?
Oh, I mean, it really can impact them.
Is it the difference between them being a success or not?
No, I
Okay.
would say it's not.
Yeah. Not that far.
Not that far. The editorial, being an editor was the hardest job I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because there's so many tracks out there
Yeah.
that are worthy. I mean,
Do you know what the latest number is, by the way? Because I keep saying 125,000 a day.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more now. Do we know what your
so
number is?
the last time I heard was 100,000 a day. So
Okay,
it
fine.
probably is 125,000 a day.
Fine.
To try and like whittle that down. And when I was there, it was like you'd recycle 10% of the tracks every update. So, and this was pre-algorithmic playlist. So
Yeah.
it's when it was just pure editorial curation. So sometimes it'd be a 50-track playlist and you're trying to put 5 tracks in there. And how you narrow that down to the 5 was one of the toughest things I've ever done because, and I'm sure every editor at every streaming service will tell you, like, a lot of people deserve chances in playlists, but you have to also respect the audience of that playlist.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that gets lost a lot in the music industry when you're talking about artist growth. You forget that editors have to think about the music and the artist journey, but they also have to think about the audience that they're curating for. Because no audience, no artist growth. Mm-hmm. So that's why you can't just chuck a whole load of, like 50 different tracks every week.
Yeah.
It has to be a successful playlist in order to be successful for the artist.
Yeah.
So those decisions aren't taken lightly. And I guess an example I can use of a positive example of when I was there, there's a band called The K's that I found through some internal algorithm, and they had 50 monthly listeners. And I listened to a song called Sarajevo, and I thought, this is great. I love this. And they've got 50. And it's that little dream that I think everyone has of like, oh, what if I've discovered the next big indie band or the next big thing? And I put them on playlists, and they're one I think of when I'm thinking, I put them on Hot New Bands, and I saw it go really well, and it went onto the indie list. And then I left Spotify, and I hadn't followed them for a while. And then I saw them really high up on the lineup at Reading and Leeds about 4 or 5 years later. And I was like, oh my, this is the band that I had seen. And it turns out that a label had seen them on this playlist and had been chasing them and had signed them off the back of being in Hot New Bands in the indie list, and then sort of seen them grow there. So in terms of getting recognition as well, they can be really successful.
Game changing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, because like again, when I think of editors in that capacity, it does sound like very much and maybe this is not how it is now, but perhaps when you were there, very much the gatekeepers to not music, but an artist's career, basically, or the success of their career. there's algorithmic playlists now. They're very much a thing, and they seem to be getting more and more of a thing. Do you think there is still a place for curated editorial playlists?
100%. 100%. I still think you need the human touch on things, and you still need to, and sometimes, sometimes the algorithm can just show you as a listener what you want to hear. And sometimes you need to be shown something different. And that is something I sometimes look at algorithms and I go, I'm in a little echo chamber here. I want to break out and see something that is curated by a human that they're telling me, I think you should like this.
Yeah.
Or I think you would like this. I think you use the term gatekeeper, and that certainly when I was at Spotify was just a no-go word. We didn't want editors to be viewed as gatekeepers.
Yep.
Because it felt wrong. And so I think, but there was also this thing of, well, but you kind of organically are the gatekeepers, whether you want to be or not. And whilst I don't know, my assumption is that's kind of where the algorithm came from, so that it kind of takes away some of that gatekeeperness. It means you can have more tracks in playlists, you can support more artists, and then the algorithm can help in that sense to kind of take away.
Yeah, okay. So, but there's not. So let's stick to this point then, and I'm not going to dwell on it. But what is the difference then between, because while Spotify, it sounded like, didn't want editors to be appear as gatekeepers, but there's no real difference between choosing that track to go on that Spotify playlist to choosing a track that goes on the Radio 1 playlist, right? Is there a difference?
Oh, that's a big question, I think. There is and there isn't. It's really interesting, actually, because, again, when, you said before, being in radio helped me with Spotify, and a lot of people went from radio to Spotify because of the idea of curating for a specific audience.
Yeah, okay.
I think the difference that you get on Spotify is that you get a lot more data that informs your decisions. Because it's all there in front of you. You can see who's played it, what the skip rate is, what the completion rate is. And and this is going back when I was there, so I don't know what, data they have now, but you can see a lot of this stuff in the analytics tools. So a lot of curation does come from that as well.
So I'm going to ask, because I've got a question right here that sort of leads nicely onto that, is how do you strike that balance then between the data-driven decision-making and, I guess, creative decision-making, right? Creative license, let's say.
Yeah. I think data can inform creative, but that you shouldn't get too heavily. It has to be a balance, right? Because if you get analysis paralysis, like it's not going to go anywhere. But data can tell us leading things, or it can suggest hints to things. So from something like, does it look like a track's working? Yes or no? How's this, is the stream rate going up or down? Something as simple as that is really important. It can also do things like, it can inspire creative in a sense of, you could look at what your search terms are trending, see what the audience are looking for when they're looking for you.
Yeah.
So you can see that in your YouTube analytics. For example, what are your search terms that are leading people to music that could inspire creative in terms of playlist titles or where you want to lead something. So I never want the data to overtake the creative, because we are in a creative industry after all. But I think data can be a good tool to inform where we take the creative, but it should never overtake it.
Okay. I'm going to read this question, which I don't normally like doing. What's one major misconception about streaming platforms that you think the industry gets wrong?
Oh, I think I might have already said it. I think it's the forgetting that playlists are made for audiences.
Right.
And I think people forget it. And it is that case of you are making... So when I was there, I was making the indie list for the audience who were listening to the indie list. And we're striking that balance between building up a really strong space for the indie list so that the artists that we put in can achieve something. So a direct example, I once put Liam Gallagher on the cover of the indie list, and the stats just shot up because people recognised him. The audience wanted to see him. But what it meant was that, one, he should have been on the cover of the indie list because he's a big indie rock and roll star. But it meant that the smaller artists I was putting underneath him were getting the benefit of that.
Yeah.
So it is frustrating when you're working a priority artist as a priority for you and it might not get the support that you want, or it's not moving the way you want it to in playlists. But those playlists, the audience have to come to that playlist. Otherwise, there is nothing there for your artist to take from it.
Okay, when we talk about breakthrough artists, what I want to know, the best case study you've seen where streaming strategy has led to a breakthrough moment for an artist.
See, this is great because streaming strategy alone cannot break an artist. It always has to be like a team effort. And the artist that sort of embodies a really good conjoined campaign that all fed into each other and fed into the streaming strategy is Griff. So we signed Griff at Warner Records when she was still in school, before she'd released anything. And we did not release a single peep of music until we had the first 3 tracks finished, until we had creative and a video done, because Griff has got such a strong sense of artistry. It's a really fortunate thing. You know, we signed her when she was 17 years old. I didn't know who I was at 27, I don't think, let alone 17. And she knew, and she still does, who she is, what she wants to say. She makes all of her own clothes for the music videos that she's in, and for everything that she does. She has made everything she's wearing. There is such an overarching artistry to her that is brilliant. All of that together folded into the streaming strategy. So it was things like, as I said to you, we had the first 3 tracks finished before. So we were taking that to people from day one so they could see what her journey was going to be. And then consistently, we would ingest the music. We'd send it off to the streaming services early, really early, 2 months, 3 months. And then before one track came out, we had the next one good to go.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's not sexy, but it's organisation. That was the thing that people were going, okay, we've seen what she can do and we see what you can do, and it's all there. So people would really get behind her because you could show an entire package. You could show the story. You could show what was going on with her, and people really invested in that.
Yeah.
And we saw that growth. And she got the Brit Rising Star, and I think considering quite early on in her career. And she was the first ever Spotify Radar artist for the UK and US. They'd only done single territory before her. And everybody just wanted to be involved with her. And it was all because of organisation and not having any false starts.
Amazing. Something I think actually the music industry can be very guilty of a lot of the time is complete disorganisation, and I get it because it's very full on. But that's really interesting, that campaign you mentioned. Another one I spoke to you about before we started recording, or in fact when we spoke on the phone, is I wanted to know, like, your you've got such a wealth of knowledge across a very impressive career. When you look at all the artist campaigns that you've worked on, which one stands out?
Oh, it's Liam Gallagher. I adored working with Liam Gallagher. What an amazing management team, an amazing artist, like really switched on. And we did, I kind of can't believe what we actually got him to do. But on the second album campaign, Why Me, Why Not, one of the hero pieces of content for the campaign was we sat him down in his local pub with an Alexa smart speaker and got him to have a conversation with her over a pint.
Amazing.
I mean, that's just a sentence that sounds like it doesn't really make any sense to me. But we worked with Amazon and with Liam to come up with questions that we would input into the Alexa, so that when he asked, she would respond with, you know, the album title or jokes or call him our kid and stuff like that. And we sort of worked on it, put it together, and I'm like, there's not a chance that Liam Gallagher is going to go for this. And but he loved it. He thought it was just, it doesn't take, I mean, it's quite obvious he doesn't take himself seriously.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is jokes, this is great fun.
Yeah.
And it was just supposed to be kind of a silly piece of socials content, but it went down so well, and he just nailed it with the execution that ended up being a Christmas TV ad.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. We're near the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been quick.
I want to touch on one other question before that. Oasis. Let's do this.
Yeah.
What do you make of the reunion? Number one.
I think it's been in the works for years.
Mm.
I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory or what. I think they've been incredibly smart with it, and they've planned it, and they've fake argued and.
Really? Do you think that's?
I don't think the whole thing has been fake.
Yeah.
But I think
they've played on it a little bit.
Yeah, I think they've
Wow.
started to become friends, and they've planned it. Because how do you book a tour that big?
That is a
Like
hell
that.
of a build up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's been loads of NDAs.
You've mentioned indie before, so I'm presuming Oasis, whilst they're pre-Killers and all of that, you into their sound?
Oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah,
You're just like, you're born knowing all the words to Wonderwall, right? And
yeah. Amazing.
But yeah, didn't get tickets. So, but
Well, let's touch on that quickly.
Yeah.
Because that was hell of a saga.
yeah,
The ticket saga. What did you? I can't remember. What dynamic pricing?
yeah, dynamic pricing. Like
Do you know what that is? Because I'm not sure. That's when, based on the speed at which they sell, they'll bump the prices up.
yeah,
Is that right?
It's
Or the rate at which they sell, or something like that.
yeah, it's Uber Surge.
Right.
Is that what is it? I've not used Uber in ages.
Yeah.
It's Uber Surge. That's essentially what it is. Or like with airplanes, with like when you're booking a flight,
Yeah.
and you look at the price on Monday and you go back on Tuesday and it's shot up £100.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Okay.
I think it's ridiculous.
Okay. They didn't do it for the US tour side of things, which is good. Okay, right. Last question. The future of streaming. Where do you see the future of it heading, and how should artists and labels prepare for the changes ahead?
I think three different things. I think there's something I can see happening, something I'd like to happen. And what I can see happening is the integration of AI in streaming services. And I think there's a lot of fear around AI, and I'm there with it, but I think there are ways. Somebody once said, look at a hammer. Is it a tool or is it a weapon? How you view it is on you. And that's kind of the same with AI. We're viewing it as a weapon, but where can it be a tool for music? For example, I think it could come in really handy with a platform like YouTube, when you statistically, it works better for you if you have more content for one song. So if you have official video, lyric video, art track, still track, that all of that is money and investment and time. If there was like some kind of AI where you could just make an art track really quickly as a YouTube tool, that would just save money, save time, get it going, and statistically it would be better. And I don't think that element would change a lot of the artistry if we're talking art tracks. So I think we'll get an integration of that. But I think what is important for labels and artists is to think about how it could be a tool and not a weapon. Think about what your limits are and start to have conversations with these services as well, like where you have the ability to do. Artists have conversations with your labels, who have the power to have conversations with streaming partners.
Yeah.
So that we can find a way, because it's coming whether we like it or not, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So find ways that we can make it work for us and start setting the limits of where artists don't want to go. I think something I would like to see happen that is lightly happening. There's a lot of shift at the moment in the industry, with a lot of the like really sad redundancies that are happening.
Yeah.
There's lots of artists going, do I want to be at a major? Do I want to do it my own way? All of my team have gone. I want to follow my team. Where are they going? We're going to see a lot of artists doing things their own way and a lot of build on authenticity. And I want to see people leaning into that more. And a lot of them working with independents. That is going to be a huge change. And I say lean into the authenticity. Like, it's kind of one of my favorite words to say, but
Yeah, okay.
it's only going to make you stronger. And then the last bit is I have absolutely no idea. And I always think that's so important to factor because, 10 years ago when I was at Radio 1, I didn't really know what was going on at streaming. Like, streaming didn't know what was going on at streaming. 5 years ago, weren't we just looking at this like app called Musical.ly that had people doing film quotes on, and it was all a bit weird, and now it's TikTok and it's dictating everything that we're doing. Like, I think we've got to also leave space for the complete unknown, and the best way artists and labels can prepare for that is to just embrace it, embrace the space, and then when it comes, have a bit of fun with it. Don't be scared of it. See where it can take us. Ask the right questions of how could this work and how could I enjoy it? And then also still set your limits within it, same as AI.
Yeah, I've said it many times before, but I think it's fear, right? It's the fear of the unknown and the fear of change, and I guess that sort of ties into one another, and that's ultimately why generally people reject things and they fear things, they reject things. And but you're right, I guess you're either... You don't want to be in a position where you're going to get left behind. So the only way to really do that is to make sure you're embracing it and learning as much as you can about it as possible, and finding out the ways, like you said, how can it help you?
Yeah.
How can it make you do things quicker, cheaper, better? And so yeah. Okay, Alysha, I think Amy Collins was right. You are an amazing woman in the music industry. We've had a really good conversation, some really good insights as well, I think, and a different angle to what we've come at from before, I think. So this is going to be a good one. So yeah, best of luck with everything that's happening with Got Your Back, and that sounds like a great outfit. And we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, 100%. This has been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers, mate.